أيها الرفاق الأعزاء، أيها الإخوة والأخوات الأعزاء، مساء الخير. نجتمع اليوم في هذا الاجتماع الدولي الهام
Within this important international meeting, dear friends, at a time when the people and the workers and the Palestinian people are facing the greatest challenges due to acts of war and destruction perpetrated by the State of Israel, supported by the world imperialism, and especially American imperialism. I would like to start by talking about the peace, the so-called peace plan suggested by American President Trump following Gaza destruction in a situation, unprecedented situation, where demonstrations are increasing across the world. In a situation where the State of Israel is facing numerous challenges, as I speak, the situation is still very uncertain. The Gaza population continues to experience fear and being threatened by the Israeli war machine. Of course, our people in Gaza and in Palestine, as across the world, wants a ceasefire and wants this genocide to end, the genocide perpetrated by Israel. We have learned a long time ago not to trust American and Israeli chiefs of state. We still believe, like all the Palestinian population, that Trump and the American administration are only serving Israel's interests. They don't want to defend the legitimate national rights of the Palestinian people. Clearly, this plan is but one more attempt to place the Palestinian population under the American control. With this plan, we will move from a genocide perpetrated with bombs to a genocide brought about by isolation. Palestinians will be parked in Bantustans, refugee camps. Many think that Trump's plan is only a trap, trying to discourage the Palestinian population. Everyone in Palestine wants the genocide to come to an end. And we all hope that things will change for the better. But one thing is sure, a new era is about to start, a new phase is about to start. And the highest spheres of world imperialism are not going to stop us from demanding freedom and the return of the Palestinian population to Palestine. Dear friends, in our country, Israel has perpetrated the most horrendous crimes against our people, causing catastrophic destruction everywhere, destroying hospitals, universities, schools, and all the sanitary institutions, arts centers, education centers. This war is about exterminating the Palestinian population. The only goal is to get rid of the Palestinian cause and the fight for the Palestinian population in the West Bank, in the Gaza Strip, and across the world with the diaspora. stopping the Nakba, bringing an end to the Nakba that started in 1948. This is what Israel is trying to achieve with this brutal war against Gaza. As a Palestinian trade unionist, it is important for me to highlight the situation of the Palestinian workers and the destruction brought about by the war to the workers of the Palestinian population. Until October the 7th in 2023, 125,000 Palestinian workers from the West Bank and from the Gaza Strip were working in Israel. They had permits to cross the border, and approximately 80,000 Palestinian workers worked in Israel without a permit to cross the border. On October the 8th, Israel removed all the permissions for Palestinian workers to go to Israel. According to the reports collected by our trade unions from the Gazan workers, hundreds of Gazan workers who could not go to the West Bank were arrested in military camps, tortured and abused by the Israeli occupation soldiers. Dozens were killed in the Israeli jails. I want to mention the fact that more and more colons are being attacked in the West Bank. Houses are being destroyed. The brutal war waged by the Israelis is not limited to the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. It also involves Palestinian Arabs who stayed in their homes, in their countries after the 1948 Nakba. They live in an apartheid system that takes their lands and destroys their houses. The brutality of the regime imposed upon them has increased since October the 7th, because they had an additional reason, or the racist regimes had an additional reason to punish all of the Palestinian population, wherever they are. Within the country, hundreds of political activists, workers, artists, doctors, nurses were arrested. Hundreds of workers and Arab employees were fired simply because they expressed their solidarity with their brothers and sisters in Gaza. Again, the false pretext was solidarity to Hamas and the terrorist organizations. But in spite of the oppression, we resisted Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir, and we continue to demonstrate and protest. Yesterday, there was a huge demonstration in Sachin within the Green Line. It was the biggest demonstration. The biggest since October 2023. So, in this background, with this background, hunger and genocide and despair in Gaza are increasing. The international solidarity campaign is expanding across all the continents. There are huge demonstrations demanding the end of the genocide and condemning all the governments that are in favor of the genocide.
Long live Palestine. We want Palestine to live. Palestine must live. This solidarity makes us, Palestinians, stronger and even more determined to fight for our legitimate rights to come back to freedom and independence in Palestine.
Viva, viva Palestine.
Viva, viva Palestine.
تحيا تحيا فلسطين.
In this occasion, I'd like to honor the heroes of the fleet from the resistance that were arrested by the Israeli police. And those who were freed yesterday or released yesterday after a wave of popular anger everywhere in the world. I'd like to also thank all the Jews and voices in Israel who go down on the streets to call for the end of the war and the end of famine in Gaza. We are convinced that these demonstrations denouncing genocide with the complicity of the governments will continue. For decades, the global leaders have suggested peace plans one after the other, while repression, barbarity, and division between the peoples is increasing. This is expressed in the Solidarity Global Movement that is changing into a global movement against complicit leaders, and it will last as long as there will be oppression on the Palestinians. There will be no peace in the world. All of this strengthens our conviction that the solution for one democratic state in Palestine from the sea is the only solution for Palestinians and Jews in Israel. Over to the sea. So to live freely with social justice and peace, without any persecution, racism, and without segregation. Palestine will be freed from the river to the sea is a global motto now, and it is for everyone, everyone who wants to live in freedom. I want to thank you and ContreLaGuerre for international solidarity with Palestine and for the return, freedom, and independence of Palestine.
Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Thank you very much. I love you.
Thank you very much. I love you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's such a privilege to be speaking here today, and especially alongside my dear, dear friend, Mahaseen. We are gathering in really strange days. After 2 years of systematic annihilation of civilian population, of starving helpless children to death, of a genocide taking place in live broadcast before the eyes of the world, we cling to the hope that perhaps at last this horror is coming to an end. Not because we have any faith in the purity of intent of the two criminals who hatched this agreement, both belong on the benches of The Hague, but because hope is one of the essential tools in the toolbox of our struggle. When I was preparing my remarks for this conference, I planned to describe the components of the genocide as analyzed in depth in B'Tselem's report, Our Genocide. But then I changed my mind. After all, the audience in this room knows full well the nature of the crimes that Israel has been committing in Gaza, and details can be read in the reports by B'Tselem and by other Palestinian and international organizations. Instead, I want to say a few words about soul-searching and about political imagination. Because sooner or later, the genocide in Gaza will end, and only then will we begin to digest the full dimensions of the catastrophe that Israel brought upon the Strip. We must begin to prepare for that day and for what it will demand of all of us. The day after will demand a thorough soul-searching from many, first and foremost from us, the Israeli Jewish public. We will need to examine in depth all the processes of dehumanization of Palestinians for decades, and be accountable for the racism, the racial laws, the land theft, the ethnical cleansing, the indiscriminate killing, the siege, the humiliation, the cultural erasure, and so much more. No new reality will ever be possible without this reckoning and without the criminals both brought to justice and punished. But the governments around the world will also have to be held accountable for how they allowed Israel to establish over decades a clear apartheid regime and still call it a democracy. For how they supported Israel's unimaginable violence over the years, armed it, and kept calling Israel a democracy. And how they continue even now to ignore the institutionalized everyday violence against Palestinians in the West Bank and the systematic racist discrimination against the Palestinian citizens of Israel. The blood of the genocide victims in Gaza is also on their hands. The day after will also demand of us a different kind of political imagination, freer, braver, to refuse the colonial dictates that seek to force us a twisted understanding of reality in service of their corrupted interest. We can ask, for example, why is it that the dominant political discourse in the West today takes for granted that the Israeli-American demand that Hamas will not be a part of any future agreement in Gaza, yet does not even think to demand the same regarding Netanyahu and his blood-soaked government? How is it possible that we don't hear a clear international demand to condition any future agreement on the removal from power of every member of this criminal government of genocide and bringing Netanyahu before the International Criminal Court? How is it even conceivable that regime that carried out a genocide would continue to be legitimate? Another example of the importance of political imagination can be given in the context of the recent recognition by several countries of the state of Palestine. After 2 years of annihilation, the idea that such a symbolic act with almost no real meaning would be considered a sufficient act is an insult and a shameful attempt to limit our political imagination. We cannot accept that. All of those states have far more effective tools to stop Israeli machine of destruction. We demand that those tools will be used. The bold and effective political imagination refuses to submit to the dividing lines that those with vested interests seek to draw for us. One of the things that most frightens the Israeli apartheid regime is crossing the lines that separate the two peoples who live on this land. Therefore, we must define more accurately the dividing lines. Not Jews versus Palestinians, but supporters of freedom and equality versus oppressors, supremacists, racists, colonialists. It is a struggle between those who build walls and those who tear the walls down. Regrettably, and I see it very sincerely, the number of such people in Jewish Israeli society is still very small. You know, in Israel, nationalist, militarist brainwashing begins right in the delivery room. So that when those young people reach the age of 18 and are legally required to enlist in the army, only very few of them are free enough in their minds to be able to resist. But as a long-time political activist, I know for certain that change is possible and that we do not have the privilege to not fighting for it. In the end, and I will conclude with this, in the end, the genocide in Gaza will end. But in many ways, our work will only begin the day after, to dismantle the Israeli apartheid regime and establish in its place a space for equality, for dignity and liberty for all the inhabitants of this land. Our weapons in this struggle ongoing struggle will be our moral high ground, our courage, our political imagination, our determination, and our solidarity. It will be a difficult task, but we do not have the privilege of failing. For the sake of the generations to come, Palestinians and Jews alike. Thank you very much.